All right, here's a bling.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the RationalInvestor.com's Daily Brief Recap. It is Friday. It is the 11th of October. Markets clearly being dominated by potential U.S. China trade negotiation deals. Politicians in the States, you can see they're really talking all this up here today. Our conversation through the daily brief was let's wait for the actual print. Let's actually see the actual news that trade deals have been formalized before getting too wrapped up in the euphoria, optimism of potential trade deals. When we looked at the broader market this morning. Risk on, risk off. Clearly the market, in my eyes, is voting towards risk on. That's sort of this. No, not that conversation. Which conversation are we talking about? This conversation. Bonds continue to melt down. Gold looking very dangerous here. We'll talk a little bit more about gold in a bit. And yen, and I often think that the yen leads gold, but that's just me. You can see all the risk-off assets are all getting their asses handed to them this morning. Risk-on assets appear to be rallying. The only problem I have with this risk-on rally thesis is if we actually look at the individual stock indexes. Remember, buy the rumor, sell the news. Is there actually any news like deals actually getting done? What I actually noticed was things like S&Ps. This AB equals CD take us up to 78.6 against all these highs. There is still this cheeky little gap up top here, so maybe we could have a little pop higher. But on balance, I'm actually thinking that that's the end of the move, not the beginning of the move. The headlines are going to show Dow's up 400 points on the day. It's a new bull market. But as you can clearly see, lots of gaps. And actually all they've done is just rallied the market right back up into what we hopefully all acknowledge here, especially anybody who's watching TRI videos consistently, that this is actually a short trade location. And you can even see through the morning here, stock prices have melted back down a little bit. We also, considering it is Friday, we took a look at the options open interest and expiration around that. Was there some monkey business around options expiration that might explain some of this uppy here? And indeed, if they can park the market up here around 297, then option boys hit a monster home run. So also too, when we look at our risk on, risk off trades, this market has just like collapsed here over the past few trading sessions, all of these. So could we actually see some backfilling, a little bit of back and forth here? I think so. And ironically enough, I wouldn't be surprised if this bond chart rallies back up at some point and fills in a bunch of these gaps. FYI, with regard to things like stock market puts and bond market, I've actually bought like March options. So I'm thinking like well into the end of the first quarter of next year. And my target objective on something like this bond trade is actually just nothing more than a 50% retracement of this entire move. So my target on something like this bond short is actually going to be down in this 130 area. So this trade's just getting started, in my opinion. But nice to see it's moving in our direction, and there's nothing really for me to do there. Ironically enough, as I had said just a moment ago, if I was going to be doing something in the market, actually this is the time to be adding to this put trade. I've got a couple on the books. I think I'm comfortable with just leaving it as it is, but at the same time too, if I get a nice polite M like we saw here on the bonds, it was just the most polite M. Up, down, up, failure. If I get that kind of price action up here on the S&Ps through Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I might just go and buy another put. But right now, I'm happy with the two that I have on the books, and I'll just let the trade work. Um, so that's sort of our conversation about risk on, risk off. You can see the bottom trying to come in on crude. We talked a little bit about the very odd news that's going on in the crude oil market right now. We don't need to get into that today. My concern here, though, is that this the AB equals CDs on things like stock markets, maybe a little bit done. And then same thing, too, when I look at risk-off assets, gee whiz, they've come down an awful long way very quickly. I still think, though, and you never know in this crazy business, but, if these trade deals actually do get done, I could actually AB equals CD and paint an upside objective up top here. I just don't know whether we need a bit more back and forth through this to actually paint that base. We'll see how it goes. Only time will tell. Risk off assets coming off. I think you can actually see that in the US dollar. We talk lots about do we get weekly fractals. So you can see the weekly fractal is starting to form again on the US dollar index. If we actually look at the dailies, they actually do have a double top working here. Again, is this AB equals CD kind of thing? Maybe the end of the move here. But we'll definitely be watching through the coming week. I don't know where we're going to print this week, but you can see the empire. And of course, if we trade one tick below that empire low, then that actually becomes a sell signal on the US dollar. I thought I should mention it here because I was kind of mean to Goldman Sachs there through the week. They often come out with these outlandish calls. I really wouldn't be too excited about a trade here, but they came out, I guess it was last week, in the face of this fractal and said buy British pounds. And frankly speaking, I got to give them their just due. We used to have an old saying in the market, whatever Goldman says, do the exact opposite, because they're probably doing the exact opposite. But long and short of it here, I think they came out like in here and said buy British pounds. They were looking kind of foolish for a couple days. Now they're looking much smarter. So way to go, Goldman Sachs. In the face of stronger euro, stronger British pound, weaker yen, as risk-off trade, should it really surprise us to see a top coming in the U.S. dollar? I guess not. The only question for me at this point is I want to start seeing some weekly traction here to actually tell me that, yes, we're back into a risk-on type of environment. Seeing stocks act the way they are, crude oil act the way that it is, that's validating that. Seeing the way the bonds and the gold are acting, that's validating it. The only problem that I have with this is a buy signal. Yeah, of course, is this buy the rumor, sell the news kind of idea. I'm a little bit worried about that. But if we go and look at what seems to have been a leading indicator in this space of late, the good old corn, we see that the corn, if we look at all of our matrix here, it led this rally. It led the market on the way down, which I thought was really interesting. And now you can see the W's came in on Bitcoin ahead of crude, ahead of stocks. I think it led on the way back up here. But you notice that, of course, Bitcoin's coming off here today. So that sort of validates that kind of thinking that stocks are in reload short zones, that this crude oil bottom is really sloppy and messy and not really fundamentally justified. I don't know. That's a tough one. But it is interesting to see how Bitcoin is coming off here today. And I wouldn't be surprised to see the risk-on assets following the options expiry, following this Trump trade news, whatever happens out of that. We actually see the stocks and the oil come back down, and maybe gold and yen and bonds actually have a bit of an uptick here. So we'll be keeping an eye out for that. But it was an interesting message to see the Bitcoins disconnecting here a little bit from the risk on again. So if we pop on over our next chart I wanted to talk to you guys about, and just sort of like a bigger picture FYI, I put out a tweet this morning. Of course, we had long conversations in crypto Twitter about things like triangles, failing on things like Bitcoin, and watch out below. Obviously the gold bugs, I think they're in a similar situation. this could get really ugly really quickly on something that I happen to have the chart. This is American Barrick, one of the biggest gold stocks around. And I like to follow the stocks. They usually tell you what the industry's doing. And you'll notice where if we wanted to be buyers, where we ought to be concentrating our efforts. That's down in this sort of 17 to 19 area. And here we are painting one of these crazy triangles again. The gentleman that I put out a video last week, I think, he talked about these triangles. He says he usually likes to see 3 to 4 tests of the base of the triangle and then a dump. So here's 1, 2, 3. Maybe we get a little bit of a counter trend rally to fill in this gap over that coming week. Bonds, risk on, risk off, that talk. But I would say this is looking extremely dangerous here. So I have absolutely no interest in being long gold stocks right now. And as long as this looks like this, M's all over the place, my enthusiasm for gold is tempered. As soon as we start Wing out, then I can start getting interested in it again. Speaking specifically about the corn, another great analogy of don't take a trade at a trend line break because you're going to get your head handed to you. And I think that's exactly what happened. Market tried to break out through the top. Trend line said, not so fast. And if I understand correctly, the reason that they're going to paint this failure here is yet another SEC ETF rejection. Regardless of your impression of that, this was a new closing low. If we change this to like a line chart, you notice that was a new low. So we really should expect these lows to be tested at some point down the road here. That would make common sense. If we drill down to like a 4-hour, yes, we have 4-hour W's working. But, our lows here down in this area here, I still think, we could make the argument that an uptrend line would really off the 4 hours be there, which would imply support sort of down in this area. Then if we do silly little things like reload zones, what a coincidence, there's the reload zone. So you can almost get like sort of a window here where if I did want to look for a bottom in Bitcoin, this is probably the area I want to be focused in on. The only problem with that thinking here, and of course, if we go back to the higher time frames, this is a really ugly location. That's not the chart I wanted. There we are. Remember, this is this 50% rule. This is this moving average conversation. Mountain Man sitting down here. AB equals CDs are sitting just below. I'm not overly impressed with this level here. And if we did roll over in earnest and break to new lows, it wouldn't shock me one bit. So with that sort of said, I thought it was interesting following our day trading model. Basically, we have a trading range established here. If we lose those recent lows that we just painted, then that projects that test of the bottom area here down around 8,000 again. But also, too, it's going to force the 4-hour moving averages to go back into bear. Remember, dailies are still bear. And if the 4 hours roll over into bear, well, then that means we got to go back into hunting short mode, and this model might start coming alive again. So with all that said, we do have a holiday. It's a funny holiday in that, like Canada, it's our Thanksgiving. In the States, I think it's called Columbus Day. I think it's a bank holiday, but I know it's not like a national holiday. So that means we're going to have one of these funny, wonky weekends that's 3 days long in crypto. Be prepared, right? I wouldn't be surprised if you see some real wonky price action. And as it stands right now, you can see the fast-moving averages on the 4-hour are now basically a resistance. The slow-moving average on the 4-hour is support. If we lose this narrow sideways channel, then I think the moving averages go back into bear mode, and away we go. And this is probably like an AB equals CD, taking us right back down against those lows. If we can hold this channel and turn back up, then I think we've got something to work with. But for the time being, I'm very cautious, very leery here. Finish off today's broadcast. I like to watch as sort of a proxy in the altcoin space what this BNB is doing. I think you can make the argument that we're in trade location. Don't chase, don't buy up markets, buy down markets. You can see the AB equals CD was down in this area, so I didn't mind the idea of hunting bottoms down here. I don't think it's a bad idea. The only problem, of course, is that that's about all we're working with. Is we have AB equals CD's trade location, a little bit of a W. If we actually pull up things like momentum indicators, you can see that we do have a divergence that has come in here now on BNB. So now, as of this point here, now we can actually start hunting for market structure to frame bullish setups. And what I don't like is notice that today's price action, daily chart, inside bar, fail. So very much like the Bitcoin, when we sort of suggested if those 4 hours fail, we probably got to come back down to bottom trend lines. I think the same thing with BNB here. And I like to use this as sort of a proxy as to sort of the euphoria in the altcoin space and whether we can expect altcoin rallies or pauses. And as long as this inside bar is working here, I'm on pause. And I think you could also make the argument too, we talked trend lines there, boo-biddy-boo. If we do simple reload zones, gee whiz, there's 61.8 to 78.6 right in that window. So that's sort of what I'm thinking going forward here. I see it on Bitcoin, I see it on BNB, and so as a result, just crypto in general, I'm on pause, and if the 4 hours roll over, then I might have to go back into short trading mode. So, okay, there's your daily brief summary. I hope you enjoyed that, got some value out of it. We had a great conversation in the daily brief today, all about getting in touch with your personality type and who you are, and how you build plans to address your very specific personality type. So we had a really great session in the daily brief today, and also just a big shout out to Netherlands TRIers. They're having their meetup tonight, so if you guys watch this tomorrow, hope your heads don't hurt too much. Hope you said hi to Carmen for me. Inside joke. Have yourselves a great day, everybody. All the best, and I'm out of here. Bye for now.